we're going to give you a little recap of what we have done over the last 7 hours. Let's be clear, we're only 7 hours. This could be one day's work if we did it from 9 until 6 with an hour for lunch.
Yeah, writers have a very interesting. Every writer is different in terms of how long they can do the creative process. I will say, breaking story, what we've been doing the last 7 episodes, I think is some of the hardest work.
I do too.
It's the most mentally taxing. Usually when we are in the cracking story stage, I don't think we get a full 8-hour day of just that kind of focus.
I get burnout. I absolutely get burnout. And
we get exhausted. I mean, by the afternoon.
It's important. I think it's important to go away and let your mind rest. And let the day soak into your creative unconscious. And let that come out. And we're going to talk about that in a minute, because I've had an experience of that over the last 24 hours, and I'm going to share that with you all in a minute. Ben doesn't know about this.
Well, let's do the previously on.
Wait. I'll do the previously on, and you do the recap. Here we go. Previously on Ben and Jake Write a Movie.
Okay. We came to this with no real clue of what we were going to write, but we knew our brand, we knew our genres that we love, we knew the kind of movie we wanted to our next movie to be. So after working through a bunch of ideas, we did land on one. And it was broadly, what if a demon who wants to be human was given the opportunity, if they were able to bring the Antichrist from a small town in America to the Holy Land? It's broad, but it was a starting place. We started to talk themes of taking control over one's destiny, free will, that kind of stuff. That our protagonist would be both a human who is average, but has the potential to be the bringer of doom, and a demon who has abandoned hell and lives in isolation. Our villains began to evolve and will range from other demons of hell to the celestials of heaven to the police trying to stop them, even biker gangs. And as we've just begun to structure our major beats, the characters have continued to take shape and the plot beats are getting clearer. And that is where we are today in this structuring section.
So, we were having a conversation yesterday about the structure of this movie and what are the major turning points. And we had discussed about at what point do we discover that Sam, our human protagonist, is the Antichrist? And at what point does the demon discover? Is that the same moment? I think that's the same moment. You know?
Yeah, probably. Unless the demon decides to withhold it from her, which is possibly really interesting.
That is interesting, and we'll discuss that possibility.
Yeah.
As I sat with the discussion we had yesterday about whether or not that should happen at the darkest moment and whether or not that should happen at the midpoint. I had argued yesterday for that happening at the darkest moment, and you said you felt that it should happen at the midpoint. I'm still feeling today, even though we went, let's put it at the midpoint and see how it feels, that happening at the darkest moment continues to feel instinctually right to me. Okay. And let me discuss why and why I feel this way.
Sure.
So I feel two things. The first is I feel that is an excellent, emotionally devastating moment for both our protagonists.
Okay.
And truly feels like, oh my God, that's crazy. Especially if we've gotten to this point, let's say we arrive in the Holy Land. We've gone through all those trials and tribulations only to discover that I've been bringing her here essentially to die. And holy shit, I'm the Antichrist. Add to that, which would be a plot beat, which I still like, which is she is then captured by the Celestials and taken away. It's like, oh no, at that moment, it has all gone wrong and all comes crumbling down. My concern is that if we put it at the midpoint, that the movie, and it's not to say that movies don't go in different directions, but that goes in such a drastically different direction that I feel like I'm only getting the quote unquote promise of the premise, to quote Save the Cat, but that being that, this is going to be a chase movie whereby I'm bringing this person to this particular place at this point. If that's at the midpoint, I feel like I'm robbing the audience of that premise. I think a little bit, and I had mixed feelings at the time about Mad Max Fury Road. I know that we both did.
Yeah, I still do.
And I still, and to some degree, I still do. But it's interesting. I do look on it now, strangely, and go, "Oh, actually, it's a really amazing, wonderful movie." Now, obviously, in that particular one, they got there, and it wasn't everything that they offered. But how much more robbed would you have been if that had been the midpoint? I'd have been like, then what is even going on now?
What is the midpoint in that movie then?
I don't know what the midpoint is in that movie. I'm not coming to it with that.
Almost feels like that is the midpoint of the movie, because then they have to go all the way back.
I mean, but that's the last quarter of the movie.
Well, Act 3 is really, really short. I mean, again, all of this in terms of big changes, like the midpoint is, I think, it's a term that we use, but it doesn't have to actually be on page.
No, of course, but it should
of 100 pages.
Sure, but it should roughly be
big
in the middle of the movie.
Turn, right?
Yes, sure,
it's the biggest.
Sure.
Turn.
I'll also add so the first thing was about, I feel that you get an emotionally devastating moment at a moment where you should feel like, oh no, like really feel, oh no. And the second part comes to this structural idea about where we are geography-wise and where we are with certain antagonists.
Okay.
And it comes down to at what point we get to the Holy Land. I like what we've been discussing, whereby a group of the antagonists are the police. And if our story starts in America, I feel like we're only going to get those antagonists for 2.1, unless they hop on a plane and go against their jurisdiction and fly to Israel, which I'm not sure I fully buy logic-wise. So again, it just comes down to structurally, at what point do we want to get
there is jurisdiction
point?
for Americans to follow a kidnapping across the ocean. It's not like you lose.
Okay.
Joint operations happen all the time. So
okay, sure. So okay,
it's not that
might not be that might not be something. But anyway, but really, for me, it's the character aspect of, oh no, I cannot. But now I'm not coming to it with going, and I've got another alternative for a midpoint. I'm not.
Right. So that's my biggest. So I hear everything that you're saying, and I don't think, and I'm not going to say that you're wrong in terms of like, yeah, it is a really, really big deal, and certainly could be a darkest moment. And there are multiple options. I mean, I don't believe that the darkest moment has to be literally at, the very last moment of Act 2.
No, I don't think it is. Yeah.
Dark night of the soul, whatever, however you want to describe it, in the middle of 2.2.
Yes. In fact, generally that's where they are. In terms of, again, if you're going to go into what certain books say, there is a moment after that darkest moment that's still in Act 2, which is, how are we going to deal with this? I
don't necessarily buy that in terms of the book. My feeling is that's you're kind of bridging into Act 3 at that point, and at the beginning of Act 3 really is the pulling yourself up by the bootstraps and then moving forward towards the climax. But regardless, whether
it's a sequence of events, regardless of not
3, it's another emotional turning point. And we've had movies where that emotional turning point has happened at the very end of Act 2, and we've had moments where that has happened just before, or whatever. The things I think that I would want to, if we were going to walk through that and walk down that path of going, okay, so maybe let's say the betrayal, the reveal of the betrayal is our somewhere in the latter half of 2.2 big emotional turn.
Yeah.
There's a few things that become not possible based on our previous conversations, and that's okay, but I just want to walk through those. Number one, our Celestials do not become antagonists until that point.
Yes,
in this
potentially.
version that you're pitching, there'd be no reason for them to. There'd be no logical reason for them to be standing in the way of a person who's doing exactly what they want them to do. So we would never have that additional obstacle of them until essentially the very, very end of the movie, which for me then comes to the villain plot, which really is where my biggest issue would be with this version. Who is our main villain of this movie? And if it were the traitor, if the villain is I'll use Last Crusade as an example, right? Which is a great moment of, oh shit, we're working for the bad guys, and that really does happen more in the middle of that movie. It's not really.
Do you think so? When do you discover that? When do you discover
it's before they're even? I mean, they're in Germany. They're in the castle. They walk in, whatever that mansion or whatever, and they discover right then and there, oh shit. Like he gets captured, right? He's Junior. You brought the diary with you. Oh,
yeah.
And then they're captured, and then you've got this whole long thing about the two of them tied up with each other. We already know that they're the bad guys. We get a scene with the bad guy where he and the girl.
Now, when you say the bad guy, you mean the person who's given him the job?
Yeah, I mean, I would say in that movie he is the bad guy. He's the main villain. I can't remember his name, but he's definitely the main villain, and the girl is working for him.
Yes.
You know? Yes. So you get all of that stuff, then they're tied hand in hand, then they cause the fire, then they have to escape, then they have to follow them, then they finally get to the thing, then they have to do all the trials. There is still an enormous amount of the movie that happens. And I don't know time-wise, but just story-wise, there's a lot of movie that happens after that reveal, even though it's a huge reveal. And it's, oh my gosh, this was a trap all along. So that would be like, I guess, a comp of going earlier, of doing that change earlier in the story of the movie. In terms of, don't go onto the computer looking at what time it actually happens, because I'm still talking. So in terms of the villain, and like whoever we're going up against in the end, in that final end, should feel like our main villain of the movie. So
yes, I agree.
3/4 of the movie has all been this, demon that's potentially after us. Then that's who I feel like the climax should be against. And so if all of a sudden we throw this wrench in, and that wrench has nothing to do with our antagonists, then I don't understand why we're then spending that time at the end. And we had this issue with another movie that we were writing. And the note was, we need to somehow tie in this ending to the twist of this character being the bad guy all along. If you remember, it was this spec that we're actually about to go out. We can't talk about it right now, but there was a version of this where we also had a twist like that. And the note was that it felt like it wasn't connected to the main villain arc, and that we didn't fully, like, it didn't fully feel right because of where it happened. We were also in that particular movie with that person more. And that's another question, is I go, if our, let's say our Celestial Gabriel, just using that name, shows up on page 10 and gives Charlize a job, are we not going to see him again until page 90? Like, and then we're supposed
to be, and again, I know you're saying don't look at when it happens, but it's funny. I don't remember, and again, I'm happy to be wrong. I don't remember the American guy being in the castle, or at what point or at what minute that's happening. I would just be really intrigued to see.
Sure.
So humor me while I do that for a second.
He 100% is in the castle.
Okay.
During the rain, and he that is the reveal that they were working that he was working for him all along.
It's Indiana Jones. It's not on Disney Plus. That's crazy.
What?
Yeah. That's interesting.
So sometimes, guys, this is part of our process is going and talking about other movies and where they
absolutely. Yeah.
But the reality is, regardless of what happens in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, this is not Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. The point is that there's an enormous amount of story after that reveal. And so the villain that is the villain that we are ultimately going to defeat in the end, because he is the one who drinks from the grail.
Yeah.
He's the one who dies.
Absolutely.
Has time in the movie. They have space in the movie. We have multiple scenes other than just the recruitment scene in the movie.
Right.
So that would be my concern going through and waiting to introduce them as an antagonistic twist that late into the movie.
Sure.
I think it could, in theory, still happen in 2.2. But it would have to happen early enough, again, to still have at least one set piece or one big scene of some kind where we really have an emotional connection to them being the antagonistic force before we ever go into, they're the ones that we're going to have to defeat in order to achieve our goal. Because the demons up until this point and will have been the only real obstacle, even though the police might be an obstacle. They're certainly they're not the Terminator,
and obviously, in Terminator, after they escape from the police precinct, you don't see them again.
Right.
In that movie, they're not part of it at all until maybe the very, very, very final end when she.
Right.
And even then, probably not. You don't see them again.
No, they die.
Right. Sure.
Yeah. When he attacks the police station.
Yeah. They're all essentially gone.
But it'd be
anyway, to your point, yes, you do see you suddenly realize at the midpoint in Last Crusade that the person who sent us on this mission is we have been working for him, and now he's got the Grail Diary. One could argue that's the darkest moment of that movie.
and it might be, although in that movie they actually have a darkest moment where his dad might die.
When his dad gets shot and he has to go and do the trials.
Thing is, you don't have to, and I think this is really important for any writers watching that are emerging and still learning, is that while there's usually an aspect of a moment, an emotional turn whereby the character is in the, oh my gosh, I'm never going to get out of this, we've lost. It's really a we've lost moment,
that's it.
Right?
And that's it.
And that moment doesn't have to happen at the same time in every movie. But it does need to serve the story that we're trying to tell. There can be a darkest moment later that is death related or capture related or a true dark point,
And one could say that in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, using that as a comp, we finally get to the hidden temple. We finally arrive there, and the bad guys are already there, and then they shoot my dad.
And then I'm forced to go in, and if I don't, really, Act 3, I love Last Crusade. I think it's a brilliant movie. There are aspects of Last Crusade that I like better than Raiders, and we've talked about this. I probably prefer Raiders more, but
there's a better emotional story. There's a better emotional through line in Last Crusade.
The character drama in Last Crusade is actually
it's rich. And we've often said that in Raiders of the Lost Ark, there's not this enormous character growth.
He doesn't change.
He doesn't change enough. But at the end of Last Crusade, you're like, he's healed this relationship he's had with his dad. It's so satisfying. And yet, what's interesting is when you watch it, you are going, I feel like I'm watching Raiders of the Lost Ark as well, because it just fits so much into the paradigm of what that movie is too.
Totally. So like, in that sense, when they get there and Sean Connery is shot, you still have the entire section of him going through the trials.
And it's
That's Act 3.
That's Act 3. And honestly,
right?
like looking at the moment here, by 1 hour 40, they're in the temple. They've been confronted by the guy who they've realized that they've been working for all along. You've still got, including credits, 25 minutes left of this movie.
Exactly. So that would be my perspective on it. First of all, Thomas, hello. Thank you for popping in between meetings. We love it. Please feel free to comment more and
shit on the floor.
in.
Thomas, where did that go?
So basically, I think that for the sake of this movie and because of the way that we are structuring the movie and because it's the twist is a character that we will have been away from a la Last Crusade for all of 2.1 at least and a good chunk of Act 1 as well. If they're going to remain the main villain and they're going to remain the primary force of antagonism behind our character, we've got to get them back into the story. And
I hear that. I think that's a very valid point. I suppose then ultimately what we're saying is essentially it continue if we do have that reveal at the midpoint. Essentially, the thematic idea, the idea of this movie is here are two heroes being chased is still the case.
Yeah, I mean the tone is the same. The action of the movie is the same. Yeah. But honestly, like if we're going to talk promise of the premise, the promise of the premise is a supernatural action movie. The promise of the premise is a demon and a human end up becoming friends over a journey whereby they discover that the human is the Antichrist. Like broadly speaking, like that can go in all different directions.
Yeah.
So whether they're being chased by the demons, being chased by the angels, being chased by both, they're still going on the journey of the two of them having to work together, growing, forming a bond, and ultimately trying to stop what both factums are trying to do.
Yeah, factors. Yeah. Interesting. I just kind of go as well. Again, it's about what is revealed, because maybe Demon doesn't. It's about kind of going what. Yeah, what I'm trying to say here. The clearest way of saying is, it comes to about the demon's promise of mortality and soulhood. Mm-hmm. Does that have to come at the midpoint as well, or can that come elsewhere, somewhere later?
What has to come at the midpoint for me currently in the structure that we're talking about is the angel that gave me this job has been using me to do something that I am not okay with doing.
Right.
And thus I go against those orders, thus causing the angels to have to come after us as well. Mm-hmm. It draws them into an active role now in the story.
Right.
Now, what information gets Charlize to make that choice to stop her mission and go in the opposite direction to save Sam instead of deliver Sam to the angels? The thing that makes her change her mind, how much information is revealed on that? I think that's still up for debate. But whatever it is, it does need to be big enough to make
so that's interesting. So you just said something that kind of sparked up. But again, I'm hearing your point about making sure that the Celestials are, and it's not just the Celestials, it's that, let's just call him Gabriel for the moment because it's just ease.
Sure.
That this Gabriel character then becomes an antagonist.
Yes.
And that the forces that he is associated with, i.e. the other Celestials, are now also after us.
Correct.
I thought you were on our side. Oh no, holy shit. you're not.
Right.
What I was going to suggest, but it doesn't work with that, but maybe it'll spark something, was, it's just based on what you said, was, does Demon learn, oh, when we get Sam to Holy Land, we're gonna kill her? And it's, do I immediately go, fine, well, I'm not going to do that then, rah! And that becomes something else? Or is it, I'm kind of going along, but something nags at me that just doesn't feel right because you're going to die? I don't know. I'm just kind of exploring that for a second.
I mean, something nagging at her isn't going to turn the Celestials against her. Again, unless she makes an active move.
Yeah, that was the point.
She needs to either pull a sword on Gabriel, or, you know, like, she's literally at the midpoint. She's literally about to hand over Sam, completing her mission, discovers the truth, and goes, fuck this, and car chase or some shit like that. You know what I mean? Like, there needs to be an active going against my employer to have my employer now chase after me. You know, it can't just be unless it's a suspicion and we bring her in going, I don't know, or unless the goal is that we're trying to kill her all along and that we find a way to weave that in.
Yeah.
But it's, for some reason, the plan changes.
Okay.
Right?
We're at a half an hour mark.
We are.
So we're just going to say, we will pause an episode here and we will continue now. For those of you just joining us in episode 8.2, we are continuing to talk structure of our story, and the first half an hour this morning was really us just drilling down again on this concept of what turns happen at what point in our movie. I came today with a nagging feeling that I'd had overnight, that perhaps the reveal of the fact that we are working for the villains in this story, unbeknownst to us at the beginning, but known to us now, should happen towards the latter half of the movie. And Ben, I think rightly, has argued the fact that if that happens at between pages 80 and 90 of our story, that we will be missing out on opportunities to use that antagonistic force from perhaps the midpoint onwards, which is what he was arguing we should be doing. So I can hear it, and I just think there's still details to continue to work out and threads to pull and look at.
I think the other thing is, like, let's talk about what could be another all seems lost, or the fate of the world is on the line, or my dad gets shot moment. I mean, like, if the reveal that the angels are bad happens in the middle of the movie, well, we still need the obstacles to get harder and harder and harder, and we still need us to feel as though the goal is out of reach by the end of Act 2, so that we can go into Act 3 with even more stakes and a ticking clock and the feeling of, am I going to win or am I not going to win?
So, well, let's discuss that again. It's just part of working this through, because the goal, and it's something we discussed yesterday, the goal changes.
Yeah.
And what does success look like when the goal changes? I need to have a clear understanding and a clear feeling of, oh, I know that I've won. Now, in Terminator, I would say that the goal is, for the first part of the movie, getting you away from the Terminator, because the Terminator is trying to kill you. You have got to survive. Yeah. And then at another point, it becomes, we've got to kill the Terminator, especially in Terminator 2.
Yeah, I mean, in the first Terminator, I don't even know that, I don't know that they even believe that they can kill the Terminator.
Right.
I actually think even when they're putting the bombs together, it would be my my personal opinion
Yeah.
that it's just as a defense mechanism that the chase is still what is going on, because the Terminator then shows up at the motel and they're just back on the run again.
Yeah.
There's never a, okay, we're going to take the fight to them moment.
It's true. Yeah. And I would say that I feel that is a fault with that movie, because I go, you're just going to go and live in a cabin in the woods somewhere. It doesn't feel like it has this final thing that I'm working towards. But you do get a nice finality when Sarah Connor finally kills the Terminator. But that never seems to be their plan. But in Terminator 2, I feel that Terminator 2 is a better movie because they're running, and then they go, no, there is something that we can do to stop this from happening. We need to go and get the whole thing with Cyberdyne and all that stuff. We need to go and stop the future from happening. Boom. And so I guess what my question is what is the midnight run of part 1, but the Terminator 2 of the second half? Because we've just got to get you to survive. I don't think it just doesn't feel strong. There was at the beginning a very concrete goal. I'm going to get you here by Friday evening. And then it becomes, I've just got to keep you alive indefinitely in the future for you to prove that you're not the Antichrist. But is it that? How can we prove that you're not the or that you are good? Something like that. I need a concrete goal for 2.2.
Yeah, I guess I just go, I don't know that this movie lends itself to a Terminator 2. Okay, we're going to take the fight against we're going to flip the tables, and now we're going to take the fight against them, purely because of the way that we're structuring the villains and the way in which all of this is happening. I go, well, what is it feels like almost suicide or something. I go, oh, I just discovered that the Celestials are actually trying to kill her. Oh, and I also have all the demons that hate me after us. And oh, by the way, I also have the cops after us because I've now taken a hostage out of the country. But I'll just fight all them now. And
I don't think it has to be fighting. Again, what's interesting about Terminator 2 is they don't go, let's go and defeat the T-1000. They go, they actually play it smart. They go, what is the way that we can win?
But that is the way to defeat the T-1000, right? If they can stop Cyberdyne from ever existing.
But they don't do it by going, let's get all the guns out and shoot the T-1000.
No, totally. But there's a way in which they can do that. So yeah, I'd be having to figure out, how do you defeat the angels? How do you defeat the demons?
But again, so let's just break it down. What are the demons after? What are the Celestials after? They are after the Antichrist. That is currently Sam. Is there a way? Again, I don't know. Is there a way to get rid of that curse? Is there a way to prove that this person is not that person? Is there a way to wash them in the pools of Bethesda in Israel to clean away that aspect of them? I don't know. But is there something that they can do to give me a concrete goal other than just, we've just got to get away? Because it just feels amorphous, and it feels a shame to have had a concrete goal in the first half of first half of the movie, and then we just have to survive, and survive until when, and survive until what? Until ultimately, it's to prove that you are not the Antichrist,
right?
Say again.
I mean, it's until the bad guys can't find you anymore. What would you say? I mean, in Jason Bourne, that's basically what happens in the Bourne Identity.
It's been a minute since I've seen it.
I mean, in the Bourne Identity, in the first half of the movie, he's trying to figure out who he is. He has a very concrete goal. I have amnesia. I need to figure out who I am.
And then it's to defeat the people coming after him.
No,
so that he can escape and not be seen anymore. And
no,
kill
he goes on the run.
After him.
What?
Well, he has that whole thing in the second half of the movie where he's been found, and it's, I've got to defeat the person who's found me so that I can escape away into nothing once more.
But that's
it's defeating, and it's the defeating of Clive Owen.
But that's because he found. But you have
correct.
But what you're saying is exactly the opposite of what you're arguing for, which is Matt Damon's goal has not changed. He's confronted with an obstacle to that goal that he has to then overcome. His goal in the second half of the movie is, I need to just escape and get off the grid, which is ultimately what he does at the end of the movie. He wins because he ends up on a beach, right?
Right. Yes.
The obstacle to that is that Clive Owen finds them.
Right.
And then he has to kill Clive Owen in order to achieve what his goal was. At first, his goal is, I need to figure out who I am. Then I discover that who I am, not such a great person, don't really want to go back to that life, would really prefer to be left alone on a beach.
Yep. Yep.
He doesn't go against the CIA in that movie. He does
eventually, but in movie one, he doesn't. Yeah.
But in movie one, he doesn't take the fight to them. He just goes, leave me alone.
Yeah.
Just leave me alone. And
then, yes. But here's the thing. While his goal is, sure, I want to disappear.
Right.
What is the obstacle to that in that particular case, as we're saying, is Clive Owen. Clive Owen has to be defeated in order for that to happen. So what is that in this movie?
Haven't we just been saying that it's now that we have both the Celestials and the demons that are coming for us? Isn't that the obstacle? Hasn't the obstacles just been
and so what do I have to do to stop them from coming after us?
I mean, the same thing that I would have to do to stop them. I guess I'm confused by the question. Defeat them. I have to defeat them.
Great. So that's what we're going for. So in 2.2,
not that I'm going to go
goal then changes
to them. No, that's not.
Okay,
true.
so I'm confused.
Because Jason Bourne doesn't go and say, I have to. I'm going to search out Clive Owen and defeat him so that I can go and live on a beach. Jason Bourne says, I'm going to go and we're going to stay at this little house off the beaten path, and then you tip him off by accident, and then he shows up, and now I have to kill him, even though that wasn't my plan, but I have to do it so that I can go and live.
Sure. So yeah, exactly. And it's just
what I'm saying is, if the goal for our heroes changes to become, I'm not going to deliver you anymore, we're going to go find a place where you're safe. Now my goal is to make you safe, but my obstacles have increased. I now have Celestials and demons coming after me. And so the obstacles of getting you safe become having to defeat anyone that stands in my way.
So is there something interesting? I'm getting kind of infused now a little bit with the Bourne identity. Bye, Thomas. Thanks so much for joining. Appreciate you. That 2.2 becomes, we got to get you away somewhere where they'll never find you. And we are potentially successful in that, even though we're establishing that they're out looking for us and that they're on our trail.
She calls her mom.
Calls her mom. Happening Big Bear, and an angel picks it up. Okay, honey. But do they do something smart whereby they go, there is no way that we could defeat a bunch of Celestials and a bunch of demons. But what do Celestials hate? They hate demons. What do demons hate? They hate Celestials. What if we let them both know that we're here and let battle commence, and that we use them to wipe out each other? And then in the midst of it, we come in and we defeat the bad guy who's just the strongest of them. Something fun like that. And I go, oh, that was smart.
Okay, that's quite fun. So then what I would say is you could get a really great twist if we as the audience don't know that that's entirely what they're doing.
Totally.
It would be cool. Don't know if it will work, but it would be really cool if all of a sudden we show up at a place whereby we think that we've been caught by one of these factions.
Right.
And then we discover that actually we've called the other faction.
And we've laid the trap.
We've laid the trap, but even the audience doesn't feel that at first. So that when let's say, I'm using a bad example of a rock quarry, but we're in a rock quarry, and the angels land in the rock quarry, and they're like, we found you, you stupid whatever. We're gonna give us the girl. And she's like, yeah, you know what, you did find me, but you're not the only ones. And then all of a sudden, all on like the tops of the cliffs, the demons all show
Yeah,
up,
it's
and they're
kind of
like,
cool.
what the hell did you do?
Yeah, yeah.
And we get a fucking demon celestial battle in this rock quarry, and we somehow escape into the mine. Or
Yeah,
some shit like
yeah,
that.
sure.
It's big. I will say that the one problem with it is that it's big. So
Yeah.
the budget of the movie just like doubled on
Unless
that
you
set
know,
piece.
unless you just bring it all down. And if you were to say you've got Gabriel and his two buddies,
Right.
and
Okay.
you've got Bahamut and his two buddies, they could even be singular antagonists if we wanted to just keep it small.
Yes, you could.
It doesn't
You're
have
right.
to be the army of angels and demons.
You're right. Yes. Yes.
If we wanted it to be.
We absolutely could.
Yeah.
We absolutely
And then the one guy, the one policeman in the middle of it, what the hell's going on? Just shows up.
I mean, that actually would be really funny too if they've been tracking them and they didn't even know the cops had been tracking them, and then the cops show up and they're like, "Holy
shit!" And she's like, "Yeah, exactly."
And then they
holy shit.
Maybe the cop helps them get out of there.
Right. That's the name of the movie. Holy shit.
Holy shit. So the yeah, I mean that's that's a really interesting set piece. I guess my question though is that act 3, is that an act 3 climax? It doesn't feel like a climax. So where is that? Is that 2.2 and then something goes wrong?
I feel like it could be a climax. Ultimately, it's how do we win?
But I don't want how do we win is great, but you don't want Sam and Charlize running or using someone else to do their successful work. You could start that way, but
yes, I think that's what I said earlier. I think you start that way, and again, if there were 5 angels versus 5 demons, at the end it would only be Gabriel left standing. And you're like, and he's coming, and you're like, ah, shit, and she's got to go up against him, and you're like, you get the thing that you've always wanted.
Fight at the end, basically.
Yeah.
So, is there a way though to? Yeah, it's complex. We'd have to think about a way in which to, if it's going to be Act 3, how do we legitimately feel like we've failed? And then twist it so that actually this failure was what we wanted to happen all along. We wanted to fail because we knew this was going to happen.
Is it, oh no, they found us. Oh no, that's bad. Well, what if we could turn they found us into something good, but we don't tell the audience what that is?
Right.
The other thing is plan.
Yeah. I mean, we had talked about at one point, I think I had suggested, like, does she go to whomever this other demon is and make a bargain to work with them or help them? Is there a way to potentially, without seeing it, have that kind of happen off screen?
Yeah.
Is there if Sam were captured, let's say, at the end of Act 2, and that our demon knows where they're going because it's the one holy spot where this sacrifice can happen.
And she was told to bring her to this place potentially.
Right, so she knows.
She knows, yeah.
And the only way that she's going to be able to go up against them is by literally the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Mm-hmm. She goes to the demons and says, I know where she is.
So she needs to, yes. And what does she say to said demons to get them to agree to do it? They have their own want and desire.
It's got to be a double cross on both sides. It
does, doesn't it? It does. Like, I'll deliver her to you. And again, like, as a demon, might I believe her? You know? Oh yeah, you are a demon after all.
Right. You know? I realize I've lost and I'm going to pick the winning side or something like that. You know?
Totally.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really interesting. I don't know. I still don't know what exactly the details are that string it all together. But
Yeah.
I think that you know, the double cross set piece with both angels and demons there at the end definitely feels like an act 3 set piece. And I agree. You just whittle it down so that the demons and the angels have basically taken each other out to the point where it's now Charlize and the angel.
Yeah.
And they are duking it out for the
life of
Sam,
totally. I mean, it's great. Like I'm seeing, you know, again, if it's wherever we are, you know, Mount Sinai. And it's all kicking off. And in the middle of it, Charlize Theron gets to Millie Bobby Brown and grabs her and pulls her out, and it's all going off in the background. And then at the end of it, Gabriel's just left standing, and he's just like, Demon! And it's like he's coming, and it's the Terminator coming for Sarah Connor.
Right.
In that final moment. You know?
Yeah, I mean, the question though, maybe this was just like off the cuff, but I want to clarify something.
Yeah.
Do you see Sam as young as a Millie Bobby?
No, it was just okay.
All right, I just want to make sure that we're clear on who our protagonists
just popped into my brain as because she's
'Cause
18 now, but I don't think Sam's 18.
You know,
no, I think she's probably in her mid-20s.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, she's, you know, Haley Steinfeld.
She's Haley Steinfeld. Totally. I'll give her a call. Hello, Haley.
Give Haley a call. Yeah. It's Haley and Charlize team up.
Haley and Charlize is a great combo. I totally see Haley Steinfeld and Charlize Theron. Comments if you're watching this. Who do you see as being a cool kick-ass demon?
What do you think?
And who makes a good yeah? And it's interesting as we've been talking about it. I actually am seeing 2 women being in this. Yeah. I see Gabriel as male, and I see both
Sam
and Demon,
Haley and Charlize
as Haley as
that keeps kind of popping into my head too. I actually really that's where I'm at. There's and I think it'd be good to kind of
you see sometimes we agree.
At least sometimes. No, I mean, look, this is the process, and that's the point. But
absolutely, yeah.
You know, I think that as we're talking through this, the structural aspects of basically what we're saying is the Act 2 main turning point will be the betrayal, and I do think the betrayal gives us a set piece of some kind.
Oh, I do too. Absolutely. Yeah.
Fun, right?
Completely.
So we get our middle of the movie set piece.
Yes.
The betrayal then leads to us on the run again, but maybe in a different way where we're actually hiding out.
Sure.
But maybe there is a version where Sam says, and maybe this is part of her growth. Maybe Sam says, I can't run the rest of my life.
Totally.
Do this.
Yeah.
Well, what kind of life is that? I've never had any control, and now you're telling me that I literally have no control.
And they're always
being
going
controlled
to be
by them.
out there.
And so maybe her taking control of her life, and we think she's gone off half-cocked and gone and given herself over to the angels or to the demons or whomever. Mm-hmm. But actually her and Charlize have decided they're going to use her as bait.
Yeah, great.
We just haven't seen that off screen.
Right, I think that's really cool. Let's open up our document and let's get this. Let's get this down.
Let's also, as I'm opening up the document, Jake, let our viewers know where we're at, because I think this is a good point to split into new episodes.
Sounds good. All right. So this is episode 8.3. Today, we have been continuing to develop the major turning points of our movie. We started off the day talking about at what point should the emotionally shocking discovery that our human protagonist, who we're calling Sam, is actually the Antichrist, and that the forces of good, the Celestials, actually want to kill her. and that we've been working for the villains all along. We have re-arrived after dissecting and discussing that idea that should happen at the middle of the movie. We have then been talking about then what is the moment towards the end of our second act where things all go horribly wrong, and what the climax of the movie is, what the need becomes for our heroes in the second part of the movie, and what they can do to achieve that goal. And so we are currently have just opened up our scratch pad, and we are just working through writing some of these ideas down. Very important to write your ideas down.
So yeah, it's always good to write your ideas down. Thank you, Jake, for the recap. That was great. So now 2.2, after our midpoint set piece, is some kind of a car chase or some shit like that. Then we're now on the run, but now it's for Sam's safety. And this time, both Celestials and demons are on the hunt. So they have to go somewhere. They need to find shelter somehow. And in this moment, Haley, I'll call her Sam. Sam says she can't run anymore. In fact, and this is something we talk about a lot of times our heroes, there's lots of examples of this. A lot of times our heroes actually make their change, their emotional change happens before Act 3. And that Act 3 is actually the representation of them having changed and using that change to win.
Totally.
So that Sam at the end of Act 2 is going to say she can't live with no control any longer. And being on the run is the ultimate form of not having any control of your life.
Totally.
And
Chris, I'll answer your question in a moment.
Hiding is the ultimate form of not having control. So she's being defiant in this moment. All right. There's a question. Let's have it.
It's just purely about what's on my display on my shelves behind me. So I'm a massive Warhammer fan. I'm not sure if you know Warhammer 40,000. It's been a hobby I've been doing since I was about 11 years. I've been doing this for 30 years now. And if you look, I will angle my computer over here. That's my painting table where I paint bunches of miniatures and regularly play games. And there you go. Yes, I'm a nerd and I love it.
Nice. Yes. Jake has this great hobby. And actually we were fortunate for a moment to almost adapt
something
Warhammer.
with
it didn't go the way that we wanted it to, but it was a fun moment, and Jake got to actually go and visit Warhammer World, and I'm still jealous because I didn't get that experience, but so
maybe it'll come around again at some point.
No bitterness here.
I do hope it does. I do hope it does because it's a fun role to play. Anyway, okay, cool. So,
So basically, she's going to be defiant, and I think Sam runs off in the night or some shit like that, and then the Celestials find her. She knew that they would. She does something that we think might be dumb, and hopefully, we will think that she's not being smart. Now, I don't know what her plan is yet.
Yeah, not sure what it is, but I like the idea that we lure the audience and go, oh God, she's just doing such a dumb thing, and then realize that she's smart. I kind of love that in movies where like the audience gets fooled. I enjoy being fooled.
Well, it's Danny Ocean being beat up in the casino.
Totally.
Like one of my favorite things, and then all of a sudden he's like, all right, sorry if I hit you.
I love that moment.
You're like, this is great. So we think it's the darkest moment because Charlize realizes, how do you spell Charlize? Charlize realizes that Sam is gone.
Yep.
And will be killed soon. Ticking clock.
Yes.
So then what we're saying is, and I don't know exactly how we get here, but we're going to continue to go from macro to micro, so we'll get here eventually. In the climax of the movie, essentially, Charlize shows up and tries to rescue Sam in time, but it turns out Sam and her planned this all along.
Yeah.
And the demons are here too.
And it's nice, isn't it? Because it then gives us another twist. Yes. We think we know something, and actually we don't, as the audience. Right. You know, at the beginning, and again, I think it's very important for us to, at the beginning, paint Gabriel out as a good guy in the same way as just like in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. You go, oh, this guy's a good guy. This guy's one of the good guys.
Yeah, he wants what we want.
He wants what we want. Absolutely right.
Totally. Yeah. Totally.
There should never be any nod or tip of the hat. And it's funny, we wrote that script last year where we thought we were being really clever with a character that we thought was an ally and then turned out to be a villain. And we gave it to our manager. Our manager was like, I saw it coming a mile off. And we're like, really? He's like, yeah. From minute one, you're like,
we thought we were being so smart. We really did. And honestly, like, how many movies have we all gone to see where you go, oh, they're the bad guy?
That's the bad guy.
It happens all the time. It's really,
it's hard to do.
Are really hard to fool.
Yeah.
Like, we are all such avid movie and TV.
It's funny because we were watching, what were we watching? We both watched that Jason Statham movie where he plays the
Wrath of Man or what?
Wrath of Man, right. Exactly right. And I was going, oh, who's it going to be? It's not going to be that obvious guy because he's always plays the bad guy. Is it going to be him? Is it going to be him? It's like, no, it's the guy who you thought it was.
Yeah, it was like, it's the obvious guy.
The obvious guy.
Yeah. I mean, like, so many movies fall into that trap. So on the one hand, I just go, there's always two sides to these things, right? It's like you want to be as creative as you can be. You want to write the freshest, newest, most interesting movie. And then by the time it gets to production, they've taken all the fresh stuff out because everybody else has been confused.
Yeah.
And they just go back to the same old shit. And so it's this weird dance.
Here's the thing. None of this is going to be in the movie.
Right.
It's just going to be in the draft that gets it sold.
And that's the funny thing. We were told once by a producer, and we hear it, and we continue to hear it, that you write the movie for the stage at which the movie is and for who the reader is going to be. Yes. Sometimes the draft is going to go to buyers, and it needs to be a certain way for buyers, but it would never necessarily be that way when it actually gets made. Yeah. And you kind of know that. But it's a really tricky dance to walk.
Hard, isn't it? Because you do get attached to certain things that you've created.
You do. And then also you get frustrated when they take out the good stuff, and then you get blamed when it's not there.
Yeah.
And then you also tend to, I think, I know I do. Sometimes I just go, we don't need to come up with anything too complex because they're not going to want the complex thing anyway. So let's just go with the obvious. But to our manager's point, when they read it, if it's too obvious, they'll think it's not a good script.
And that's it.
When they watch it, they're going to want it to be the obvious
Absolutely
thing.
Right. Absolutely right. Yeah. And again, it's just kind of worth bearing in mind, isn't it, about going... It's thinking about it from different perspectives. I know that this demon is going to turn good. So I already know that I'm playing with the ideas of what good and evil are.
But you know what I don't know? What I like about our twist?
Yeah.
I don't know that she's going to have to stay a demon.
Totally. Absolutely. But I just wonder if, and it comes down to this aspect of how smart do we really think we're being? Do we really think that people are not going to go, of course he's the bad. If the demon's a good guy, of course the angel's a bad guy. You know, I just don't know.
Hence another reason I think that just plays to the argument to do it at the midpoint, because
Get
in
it over
Indiana Jones, I wasn't crazy fooled that guy was going to be not
it's
the
tough. I only
greatest
watched it when
guy.
I watched it first when I was a kid, so it's tough to go and have that experience again.
True.
I think I was probably pretty surprised at the time. My whatever it was, 9-year-old, 10-year-old self.
But every time you have like the rich guy that wants to hire you to go on a dangerous quest, you know, you go, there's something.
And of course, you know, fun fact about Last Crusade: the guy who wrote Last Crusade's son played the king and the princess.
That's true.
There you go. It was written by Tom Stoppard. Although he didn't ever publicly, he took his name off. He took his name off Last Crusade. He's done it as a Alan Smithy.
Really?
Yep. Yep.
He wasn't proud of it. He didn't like
apparently
that.
not. Apparently not. But it's a shame because I love it. I absolutely love it. But yeah,
I love it too.
It was him. But yeah,
I prefer it to. It's definitely my second favorite Indiana Jones movie for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And only by a smidge.
And by a smidge.
Yeah.
I think so too. Yeah.
Last Crusade's a little goofier. It's the tone.
It is a little goofier. It absolutely is a little goofier.
You know, the Sean Connery humor, but
yeah,
but in a way that kind of made it charming.
So that's an interesting question. That's an interesting question because let's talk about tone and let's talk again. Interesting to talk about The Princess. As we know, Ben, the draft that we wrote of The Princess that sold was a very serious film. And then when we went to that first test screening, we were, I think, quite delighted with the moments of levity and humor. What are the moments of levity and humor that exist in this story? Because again, this could be John Wick serious, you know, or it could be, you know, we've talked about there being moments of humor in Terminator 2, for example. Not a lot, but you remember them. They punctuate out of the seriousness and the not gloom, but yeah, you know.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, interestingly, I would look back at our draft of The Princess and say that we tried to have moments of levity, even if those moments of levity weren't laugh out loud jokes.
Right.
I mean, there definitely were beats, even some beats that stayed in the movie that were ours, that were like, you know, she uses the lace from her corset to fight the guy. That was a lighter moment. And even the guy's reaction to it is a lighter beat. The kitchen, when we were, you know, she uses a frying pan to fight with. Stuff like that. But I would say, I think Terminator 2 is actually a really good comp for tone for this movie. I don't think it's as serious as the first Terminator, because the first Terminator has no humor.
Absolutely.
Zero.
Yeah.
The second Terminator has some moments, but they're very sparse.
Yeah.
And it's really about the humor humanizes Arnold. The only humor revolves around him.
Totally.
And what's interesting is we have a character in this being Charlize, who is a demon, and I think it comes to how that is portrayed
completely,
whereby, like Terminator 2, I think the humor can potentially revolve around her, and it depends on
I think so too.
How human she is at the beginning and how human she seems at the end.
Yes, totally. I think it's interesting. I definitely think that the moments where you'll smile, laugh, perhaps a little, are going to come out of the relationship between these two.
But I don't think they're fish out of water moments, a la like kind of Terminator 2 had a moments of
the quality of that. Yeah, but there's even a moment that I think of, which is where he picks up the baby. He's got this chubby Mexican baby. And just an image just go, that's so funny.
Well, it came out of a lack of understanding of the cultural norms.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Depending on what we do with our demon, I think it would be difficult to believe that she would have that much of a lack of
Yeah.
understanding.
I don't think it's born out of lack of understanding.
I think it's more I'll use it, the 48 hours humor. 48 hours would be a really great comp.
That's a good comp. Yeah, great.
Because it's I think we get two actors, you know, if it's Charlize and Haley, who banter off of each other. You know, it's that kind of, you're putting on us. In fact, I would add 48 hours to our
I just wrote it down. Yeah. I haven't seen that movie in 25 years. I need to watch that again. It's been a really long time since I've seen that film.
Yeah, I'm gonna grab the document and just add it to our movie list. And for the moment, just because we've already done these, I'm just gonna cross those out. And I know you've done Legion, so that's great. And then we're gonna go 48 hours. But interestingly, that is something to watch in terms of dynamic. Like, what other movies have a bantery two-hander dynamic? Now, I don't know that this movie is a full two-hander.
Yeah.
And yet at the same time, I want to go back and watch 48 Hours because I go, is that an Eddie Murphy movie? And Nick Nolte is the straight man to Eddie Murphy, which is the way that I remember it.
Yeah.
And Eddie Murphy is the one who goes on the true arc.
Right.
Or is it a true two-hander whereby they both have almost equal journey and equal, like, protagonist levels? Like, I would say Lethal Weapon.
I was going to say Lethal Weapon.
Is a great two-hander. Whereby both of them have just as much character growth to go on.
Totally.
And so that's where that is. And
it might be worth watching both of those movies just for the nature of
the original Lethal Weapon. Yeah.
You know, what is that? You know, serious stakes, big serious things happening and going on. And yet there being moments. And again, it's just about finding that right level of again, is banter the right word? I mean, potentially it is.
It is. I mean, like, if you think it's conflict is what it is.
Yes.
Right? It's conflict. It's when they're in conversation, their personalities conflict with each other. And so each scene that they have, they want different things. They go about doing things in ways that piss each other off.
Yeah. Again, it's interesting. Having just watched Midnight Run, that's at the core of, and it's what you love about both of these characters, you know, Jack Walsh and the Duke. They duel.
And that isn't in the Terminator.
No. Absolutely right.
And I actually think that is way better for this movie. I think that we should go with whether it's a full two-hander or a semi two-hander, whereby our heroes, our joint heroes, should have really conflicting views on behavior, the world, the future.
It's interesting because I guess the question then becomes, like, we obviously have established that our demon character is just that, is a demon. What's the best kind of character that you can put into that mix that makes you go, oh, I can see they have instant conflict? It's not this, but if it were like a youth pastor, I'd be like, oh, yeah. You know, youth pastor and a demon. Like, I go, I think that's more the comedic version of it.
Yeah, we don't want to go high comedy for sure. Right. You know, like, I don't think that, you know, her being a nun is the best version of this, you know. A
nun and a demon walk into a bar.
A nun and a demon walk into a bar, exactly. Like, I think that it is a really good question, but it also goes to the idea of, like, not just the what she is in terms of
but what does she believe?
But what kind of personality does Charlize have, and what kind of personality does Sam have, and where does that stem from in terms of their belief systems and their world?
Because I mean, it's interesting using Charlize Theron as the kind of placeholder. I can see her being very, very deadpan and serious all the time.
Yeah,
you know, very, very pessimistic. very, you know, down on the world,
Yeah.
very, very keeping it real. And
I
you
could see her
know,
being a loner. I could see her
absolutely.
not really wanting to get to
Yeah.
know Haley at all.
Yes, totally.
Like,
And
this
Haley
isn't
has all
about us
that.
being friends. Like, I could see her being like,
Totally.
I don't like, I'm not interested, kid. Like, well, not kid, but you know what I
But yeah,
mean.
still,
Like, I'm not
yeah.
interested because like this is you're gonna help me get what I want, whether
Yes.
you like it or not.
Totally.
You know.
Right. Yeah. You are a means to my end.
But then in literally 2 sequences, she has to get won over. But not necessarily fully, because the betrayal could piss her off enough to go against them, even if she hasn't been fully won over yet.
Mm-hmm.
So you have, I guess, probably 3 sequences where you end up getting where their relationship is able to really build and bond.
Yeah.
Because
I
they're
was
not
seeing,
you know.
I was seeing, again, it's what happens sometimes when you like start to see scenes in your head. And like, this is in the first sequence in 2.1. And Haley's like, I really got to pee really badly. And we have a whole call, you know, like, it's like, really have to go now? Like, they were just behind, like,
Want me to pee in
really
the car?
have to go.
Pee in my pants?
Yeah,
Like,
you
what,
can just
what
go,
do
like,
you
go
want
in
me to
this. I can't go in this.
Right.
Fine, you know. So, but if you try anything, I'm not going to try anything. And she goes into the bathroom and she tries to escape out the way. She's like, I told you not to try anything. And they get into her.
Right.
We can have that something. What did you expect me to do? You're kidnapping me. You know, we can have
Sure.
that going back and forth.
Yeah, I mean, there is a natural, forget the demon part. It's a kidnapper and the kidnapper.
Absolutely right.
Dynamic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and
And
also, like,
you know, even there's the seriouser version, which is Born Identity again,
sure.
whereby she's
Yeah.
in a way at times like they have some banter between the two of them, because she's
Totally.
like, am I your hostage or am I
Yeah.
not your hostage?
Totally right. But it's even so, like, is there something where, like, Charlize Theron's demon character has no fucking sense of humor, zero sense of humor, you know, and Haley Steinfeld's character is just bubbly. She's a bubbly young gun. She does annoying things. It's like, oh great, I've got to bring the most annoying person in the world. I've got to accompany the most, you know, like something about the dynamic.
I think you run the risk again of leaning into broad comedy.
Again, it's just finding that.
Not like going and getting like Reese Witherspoon from Legally Blonde.
No,
you know, like,
no, she's not. No, but it's like, can we at least have some music? She's like, fine. He puts on opera. Like, opera? Right. Seriously? It's like, I like opera. You know, whatever it is, you know, those moments of them kind of coming together,
yes,
but through.
And there's a bit of a road trip
absolutely
nature to that, which is good, because those scenes, I think you do them, they don't need to be long to get a real sense of them, of time passing and them bonding.
Absolutely.
You can do kind of it's not really a montage, but a sequence of them traveling, even if it's just not like on the airplane, of different moments whereby they're like, you know, she's snoring on her or whatever it, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's like
totally.
Kind of
Yeah. Or
whereby
like,
you go,
they're
getting
what they
closer.
Have. Yes.
I'm seeing you as a person and you're seeing me as a person.
Yes.
And so we start to care about what happens to each other.
Absolutely right.
And I think that's obviously really, really important to the success of their journey.
Completely. I mean, ultimately, and again, you know, talking about the Born Identity, they have this great connection. They have this great thing that happens to them over the course of this journey, and they get together at the end, and you're like, yay!
Yes,
you know, as a representation of their journey together in that particular story.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Good.
Cool. You know what? Interestingly enough, I feel like this is a really good place to stop for today.
I do too.
I feel really good and accomplished, and like we've kind of cracked a bunch of new things.
Mm-hmm.
So let's pick this up again tomorrow. Thank you, everyone, for watching us go through this.
Thank you.
This struggle of trying.
But it is, isn't it? I mean, and ultimately, it's a creative struggle.
Yeah.
You know, you are trying to crack ideas. And the way that me and Ben, I think, constantly do it is we ask questions of each other.
Yes.
And if you're not in a partnership and it's just you working on your own ideas, I think that is the way that you do it. I think you just have to ask yourself questions and answer them.
Always.
And
Always.
Maybe you come up with 3 or 4 answers. I was working on something the other day. I'm currently working on a book, and I'm just writing down a bunch of questions, and then for each question, answer them 3 or 4 different ways. And then that, I think, is the way that you can, on your own, mine your own ideas. But I'm very grateful that I have a Benjamin of my own to do that with.
I always refer to myself as a problem solver. I'm a professional problem solver because I feel like that's what we do so much as we go, okay, well, that's an interesting idea, but here are the problems. So how do we fix those to make that idea actually work?
Absolutely.
Or if there's a problem with that idea and we can't solve it, then we find a new way to, you don't try and fit a square peg into a circular hole, that kind of thing.
Well, you can try.
You can try. All right. That is our day. We'll see you tomorrow, everybody.
Thanks so much. Cheers, Ben.